We are going to talk to Mina Seinfeld in Brazil, who is going to tell us a bit about the drug situation in Brazil. But first of all, would you like to introduce yourself, Mina, and welcome to WFAD broadcast.
Oh, hello. It's a pleasure to talk with you. Well, you have introduced me. I am Mina Seinfeld de Carakushansky, and I have been past secretary for drug prevention of the city of Rio de Janeiro. That's a city with 11 million people living in the metropolitan area. Well, now I am the president of BRAHA, that's Brazilian Humanitarians in Action. That's basically an advocacy group that explains and teaches people about sound prevention and sound drug policy.
Okay. So could you tell us a bit what is going on in your country?
Well, to understand Brazil in any issue, we have to remember always that it is a huge country. It's like a continent with 190 million people. So it has many faces. And regarding drugs, I will just explain very shortly that Brazil is the 8th economy in the world. That's very nice, important. It's much better than many, many countries. But there is also a social inequality because many governments in the past, either they have been corrupt or have been indifferent, have made that all these people that came to live in the urban areas, 82% of Brazilians live in cities. They don't have proper housing, they don't have proper medical attention, and many other issues that would be important. So what they have done, they live on the hills, and it's the famous favelas. It's shanty houses. Well, because governments were not strong enough regarding when the drug problem started with the drug trafficker, slowly those drug traffickers took hold of these favelas, and they have given to the poor people also not only drugs, they have not only sold drugs, but they have also provided social services for them, like a doctor or somebody died or things like that. And they have had total power of their geographical territory. All this going has led to organized crime. So nowadays, it's not only drug trafficking, we also have organized crime. The good news is that finally, in this government, the past government, but also this government, forces have joined from the military, from the marine, from the police, from the state police, from the city police, in order to try to gain terrain and regain those places where the drug traffickers are. And they have been quite successful in the few favelas they have gone. It has to be a slow process because there are so many people, hundreds of thousands of people living there. So you cannot just enter and kill everybody or try to kill the traffickers. So it is done, it's a slowly process. Here in Rio, for example, we have 1,020 favelas like that. And the police up to now has done at about 10 favelas. This is a huge space, but it's starting yet. Well, this I told you just to have an idea of what we are talking, because the same problem that we have in Rio de Janeiro, we also have in São Paulo, that's even a larger city than Rio de Janeiro, and also in some other places. The drug policy of the government for the last 10, 11 years has been prevention, but also it has been a little bit lax in in doing things to avoid the problems. So what do I mean by that? It has joined forces with the health ministry, and because the health ministry has large amounts of money because of the AIDS epidemic and everything like that, the official policy of the drug prevention secretary has been also harm reduction. And as we know, harm reduction, well, when it's only for treatment, is one thing. But when harm reduction is also for prevention, that's another thing. So all of us that work in Brazil with strong prevention, trying to avoid that our youngsters will have the problem of drugs, have encountered a little bit difficulty in this side. But anyway, let's talk about the present. Now the new Secretary for Drug Prevention, she's a woman. I know her, Paulina Duarte, and I believe that she's a serious person. She's well-intended, she has experience, and hopefully things will get better. What we encounter now, one thing that we should talk about is that in spite of all those social inequalities and all those problems with gangs and all with the drug traffickers, drug use in Brazil, the rates of drug use are lower than in many, many countries. For instance, they are even lower than in the neighboring countries of Latin America and much lower than in the United States or in Europe. But when one speaks about rates, one has to compare the rates with one country, with itself also, with the past. So now, in the last years, while drug use rates went down, like in the United States and in some countries of Europe, in Brazil they have gone up. Not so much as could have been, but they have gone up. For instance, also the official policy is against drugs, but nobody goes to jail for just using drugs. Now the new policy, official policy, is that it's only prohibited to traffic drugs. But somebody that is caught using drugs, maybe he will give an admonishment, the judge will call him and advise him, maybe he goes to treatment. We have the drug courts. That's a very modern way of looking at not sending people that use drugs to jail, but trying to give them, to make them give social service and go to treatment and not use drugs. This is one thing. So marijuana, for example, is now very, very much used in Brazil because it was 1% use over the last year and has gotten up 2.6% for the whole population. As a whole, in drug use in life, it's still 8.8%. That's one digit. So it's less than many other countries. But what has happened? We have now a very large problem, very hard problem. That's the crack cocaine. Crack.
Yeah.
It's the same, you use the same word. Well, what has happened? It has gotten like an epidemic. It started slowly. First of all, there was only in Sao Paulo and some other cities. In Rio, the drug traffickers didn't want the crack to go in because it was a very cheap drug. But nowadays, it started also in Rio de Janeiro. And we don't have too many studies, surveys. But so many institutions, they give a number, but nobody knows if this is really the real number. But I will tell you what those numbers are, and you will see that they are huge. The government says that maybe now we have 800,000 people using crack cocaine. So we know that this is very addictive. So if they are using, they are addicted. And the government by itself knows and says that 1/3 of these people that are using, they will be dead more about in the next 5 years, 30% will be dead. That's a big problem. There are other studies that say that it's even higher than 1 million people addicted. So what can be done? I agree with all those that say that we should give them treatment. But you as a specialist, I have learned from you many times, you know that treatment has to be serious treatment. It takes a long time. It is costly. And if people don't want to go to treatment sometimes, this treatment has to be given to them even if they don't want it at first, because their mind, their head doesn't function so well. So to treat 1 million people addicted to crack cocaine is something I think almost, I am an optimist by nature, but I think it's almost something out of control. So what should we do? I've talked now about bad things that are happening and about huge problems. I want to tell you also about positive things that are being done. We here in Brazil have many groups, serious groups, and serious professionals that work with prevention and with treatment. So what we are trying to do is getting on board of this movement that has started in Latin America, it started in Argentina, and now a little bit in Brazil, and also in Ecuador. That's the movement of preventive cities. Preventive cities is a very simple philosophy. So all the things that are good and are simple, you think, how come I never thought about them? It's very simple. It's just the government, the technician, the technical people, psychologists, teachers, doctors, and the community getting together. It's like having 3 groups of people. Because if we don't have the political backing of government, like congressmen, senators, councilmen, people that work in the secretaries, it's very, very difficult to have the resources and to do something. So we have to convince them that this is the best way. The best way is to prevent. So we should have preventive cities. And we need the professionals, because it's the professionals, each one in his own area, that know how to treat, how to prevent, how to talk to children, how to talk to parents, what to say, to know what's happening in the world, to say what science is telling us. So we need the professional. And we need the community, because we have to convince every family, every mother, every father, every caregiver of a youngster that it's much better to prevent the first use, or if they think that the youngster has started to use, to immediately do something before it gets worse. So when these 3 groups work together, we have the preventive city process. Well, you would say, where has this been done? We have a few examples in Brazil where we started, and sometimes you need strong leaders or people that are interested. So if you work in a smaller city, it's much easier, because then you have the ear, you can get to your councilman, you can get to your mayor, they will listen to you. If you work in a large city, it's much more difficult. But if we cannot have the preventive city in a city that has 5 million people or 10 million people, at least we can have preventive neighborhoods. We can divide the city in neighborhoods and start working in neighborhoods that maybe are easier or where people understand better, and slowly go to other places of their city. We can have preventive universities. For instance, a study that was done by the University of São Paulo, a recent study, showed that the students there at the university, the rate of drug use was 3 times that of the general population. So this means what? That the student, he studies at the university, he's very bright, he knows a lot, and yet he succumbed to drugs because maybe he didn't have the right knowledge, he didn't have the right information, or maybe he had the wrong groups. But if you inform people, that's something different. So what can the government do? Usually to give young people the ways to express themselves through sports, through arts, through community work, to do something to inform and at the same time to give them opportunities to show that life is much better if they are alert and can function as future excellent citizens. Well,
Yeah.
and the families can also help in this way. We can have preventive universities, preventive school, preventive family. We can have everything. So we just need to do it. Just do it.
Yeah. We thank you very much, Mina, for this excellent information about what is happening in Brazil and efforts to cope with the drug problem. Thank you very much.